Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Supergirl. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. This episode is kind of in, the other flip side to the previous episode, so to a certain extent, because obviously we have the team is after the supervillain, and we got a little bit of it last episode, and I think that's so interesting we actually play it into the context of this episode, that Alex is like, yeah, Kelly's dealing with that whole thing with the building going down and stuff like that. And that's all it was last episode, but you get this episode, Kelly's on the ground floor with everything. I mean, granted, she showed up there after Joey and his friend as well as everyone else in the building got hurt. She shows up there immediately to help, and she's on the ground floor helping with that. Once again, it was kind of like a one-off line in last episode, but now the entire episode is dedicated to her fighting that fight, because it's they're trying to get people help at the hospital, but the hospital is overrun because they don't have everything they need to take care of things. And yes, Alex was able to call in some people to help, which I think is actually kind of interesting, because she knows some medical people to help and stuff like that, which is I only know this because my niece is obsessed with Grey's Anatomy. The actress who plays Alex was in Grey's Anatomy for a while. I never knew that. I only know it because I've seen my niece binging anytime she's been here, and she binges on Netflix or watches the more she's caught up with the most recent episodes, but she watched it a lot. She'd go to sleep watching it, type of thing. Kind of I think a interesting habit she kind of got from my mom, her grandmother. But regardless, it just that's why I was it's almost interesting hearing that line. But regardless, Kelly's dealing with this while they're dealing with the superhero, the supervillain stuff, and I think that's so fascinating, because it's you get so caught up in the big stuff, the big picture, as John says later on, which we'll get to in a second, that you kind of forget about the smaller thing. And I think that's so interesting, considering Supergirl is all about the people. She is there for the people. She's even this fight with for Orlando and Joey, she's only helped out these particular people. She's only been there in the first stages of the battle. She hasn't seen the battle all the way through, and I think that's kind of the point. But it's you get so caught up in the big picture of yeah, I get it, you got to chase after supervillains, but you're not realizing the complications on the human level. You're not there with them to be right, because it's a fight that she can't understand. A lot of them can be. You can be sympathetic, but you can't be empathetic to something, because it's Kelly brings it up later on. It's because Kara's it's right, I was there when Agent Liberty was doing everything against aliens. It's yeah, but you are an alien, and it's of course that battle meant a lot to you because it was personal, and it's this battle means a lot to Kelly. So it's it's easy to kind of get blindsided by something that we all have our blind spots, but it's it's understandable, considering the fact is that, but even if it is understandable, don't use that as an excuse. Not trying to say she was, but it's a thing of right, just because it's harder to kind of recognize the issues when you've never had to experience them yourself. So the hardships of what that community is going through. And so for Kelly, what was so frustrating for her was not being heard, because it's it was symbolic of right, this community wasn't being heard. Rankin wasn't really helping them. She was looking after her self-interest, even to the point she was why are you bringing me this hospital? Don't bring me here, because she knew first and foremost that hospital wasn't a good hospital to go, because it wouldn't be able to help her. She knows enough to try and get out of there, but a lot of people don't have a lot. It's the closest hospital, but it's it's not getting all the that it has and needs, so everyone's not getting everything that they needed to have to be okay. So that was kind of clear from the beginning, which once again, I'm I feel so bad for the actress, because once again, in my head, she's Maggie from Leverage. That's there. So I'm seeing her kind of being a douchebag once again on Charmed, and here, it's just kind of no, but it's yeah, in actors, sometimes you play a cool, good character, other times you play kind of a opportunistic douchebag, that it comes with the job, But I thought it was just kind of the point I was making was right, a community that wasn't heard, but at the same time the parallel was drawn to Kelly, who wasn't being heard by the team, because it's I'm trying to explain what's going on, but you're so caught up in looking, because it's also Kara's got her own reasons for trying to chase after Nixie, because it's like, yeah, Nixie is trying to destroy the world and everything, but you get, it's almost like, right, you get so caught up in the superhero-ness of it all, like supervillains and stuff, you do kind of forget about the people, which I think is, like I said, so ironic in the moment, just because, like I said, Kara did try to, like, start this battle, but it's like, she didn't fully see it through on, like, certain levels. Like, she helped, but it's like, there's only so far she can go, like, if she doesn't give it, like, her all. Like, Kelly's able to kind of give it her all, because she's here on the ground floor. Because also, like, you can make the argument about, because everyone else on that team is like a superhero, so like the supervillains struggle and fight, and each one has their own personal fights, but it's like those, those fights are personal to each character. But also it's like, because even you can say the same thing about like Alex, like, yeah, she's a human on the team, but it's like the human level of things kind of goes away a little bit when, like, you've been surrounded by this for years. Kelly still kind of knew and enough of, like, her own groundedness of, like, this is a personal struggle that she can understand that no one else can. John can, but even he still has a layer of separation to some extent. So it's understandable why Kelly would be frustrated the way she is, because it's like, when she's asking the others for help, trying to open their eyes to what's going on, it's like, she's the only one seeing, like, yes, something's not right here, but everyone else only comes in when it's like, oh, it trails back to, like, oh, the only reason why they came back to the building, because it's like, right, because Nixley destroyed it, and, like, the fifth dimensional energy was there. That's the only reason why the team came back. Like, despite Kelly trying to, like, get them to, like, be involved in all of this, they were too busy at the time. And so obviously removing, like, all that fifth dimensional energy should have made everyone better, but they weren't aware of, like, Rankin is the one absorbing every time she's making something happen, because the concoction she used to, like, make herself feel better, that they end up still in the testing phase, like that with the fifth dimensional energy made it so that she started siphoning the fifth dimensional energy that was kind of residued in everyone else, along with their life force. So the more she was using her power, the sicker and sicker she was making everyone else around her. Even knowing that, she wouldn't have cared. I think she started noticing, like, right, because, like, her assistant or whatever started passing out whenever she did something. She didn't care. Like, oh, like, if other people have to, like, it's like, right. She was excited because, like, oh my God, the building's down now. Now I don't have to make this affordable housing. I can do whatever I want to. Even to the point that she's like, you know what? I'm going to destroy this entire city and I'm going to rebuild it from the, it's like, she now has the power to make, like, that was already there. There was seeds of that already. They just, grew exponentially because she now had the power to make it happen. She was basically doing the same thing, just on a smaller scale. Now that she had the power to reflect, like, her ambition, she was able to kind of move it to a more large scale, like, oh, I'm gonna destroy the city from the ground up and then rebuild it to what I want it to be. But like I said, despite everything, like, because it wasn't just a superhero team that was ignoring her. Even Andrea being like, because she was trying to tell Andrea about what was going on, but, like, Andrea's like, it's not newsworthy. I know what our audience at Catco is. It's like, she gets so blinded by that, because I mean, that's not just that. It's the community situation that it is, but also you could also be like, that's also like a news media thing of, like, right, we want things that are going to get a lot of clicks. That's not going to get clicks. Like, it's in, like, news that people can consume, the more money we can make off of something. Like, we need news that's going to captivate people, that people come clicking on our articles, and, like, that's what that comes down to. So, like, that is kind of like, right, it's kind of like how the media reflects certain communities, that plus just the beast that is the media, like, news cycle in its own right. Like, that's a whole, it's it can fit with this whole complication while also being a beast of an issue in its own right, which Kara's story has kind of covered that a little bit too, about, like, the direction Andrea's kind of been taking, Catco when it comes to news and stuff like that lately. So it's a combination of the two, but, like, under the circumstances, it's more so like, right, it's mainly about, like, that community just not being newsworthy enough, which is, like, right, people's lives, like, because these people live in this community, because they're not because unless there's a superhero right beside them, they don't matter. Their voices won't matter as much, because that was the whole thing of, like, right, Kara had to be there beside Orlando to make his voice heard, even though it's like a right, he should be able to be heard regardless of a superhero being beside him, but he needed a big name beside him, just, so once again, like, just the conversations have come up beforehand are just about, like, sadly how this, society works, and everything. So, like I said, it's just an interesting and complicated thing, and, like, it's just like when she blows up at the team, it's kind of like, right, this has been, like, she talks about it, it's like, this has been buried deep, because anytime, like, a lot of these issues have come up, she smiles and just kind of tries to stay positive, but it's just kind of like, no, like, I'm trying to be more hopeful, but like when things seem so hopeless, especially when you have a community that's filled with people who are feeling like, right, they're not seen, they're not heard, they're feeling hopeless. Like it's reflected in Kelly too, of like, right, when she needed her friends, when this community needed superheroes, you weren't there for them. It's like, she's like, it feels like I'm screaming into a void, so see me and hear me, you know? And so I thought that was, you know, fascinating, and it was necessary. You know, she had that real frank conversation with Kara, which Kara's like, yeah, I can't believe I missed all of this. I'm sorry. And it's like, kind of don't just be sorry. Like, being sorry is fine. I get it. But it's like, it's an inactive emotion in the sense that, like, what matters is what you do next. And Kara's like, right, so what can I do to help? You know, and it's like, right, instead of feeling sorry, let's get to work. I'm going to do whatever I can to support you. It is a thing of, yeah, you need to keep fighting the supervillains and everything. That's fine. But, like, right, the people need someone that's going to be there for them on the ground level, too. And that's what I am going to be able to do as Guardian. But it's like, right, at the end of the day, you can't do what you do on your own. Neither can I. Like, I'm not saying, like, oh, completely do what you're doing. It's like, no, I'm going to need help, too. But it's like, this way, like, we keep fighting the good fight. That it never, like, you know, it isn't just kind of like like, you do what you, like, it's a continuous fight. Because she even talks to Brainy about it later on, because like everyone kind of like gave their perspective on things. Like, you know, her talking to Brainy, she's like, please tell me we're better in the 31st century. He's like, I wish I could say that this is a thing of the past, but even then it's like, because that's the thing, that's the sad thing about human nature. Like, because I've talked about this before, like, I mean, and this show showcases it too. Even aliens, it's like, oh, humanity will unite against the other. Like, we'll turn against someone who's different and other. So it's like, even in our reality, I think if aliens came to this world, they'd be the new ones of like, oh, we'll bash against them, we'll turn against them. That'd be basically a new form of racism. It'd be the literal, like, form of racism of kind of like, yeah, because it's the human race versus the alien race. It'd be that, you know? So that's the thing of like, there will always be some people who will give in to hate. So like, that's why I just don't see that disappearing, because it's somewhere in, like, we're all capable of hate. Just the whole point is just like what you decide to do with that hate. Like, is it just going to, like, are you just going to hate another person for being different? Like, we all have that capability in us. It just depends on like whether you like succumb to it or not. And so it is a situation of Brainy's like, yeah, but we've made a lot of progress in other ways, but it is still an ongoing fight. But, you know, with you being Guardian, maybe you can be the first step in a major change that potentially changes how the 31st century, because obviously he hasn't been back. He's been here for a couple years, so he doesn't know what the shape of the 31st century is like. So it could be a thing of like, yeah, like her being Guardian now, she could be the first steps towards and making a major impact and changing things, because it all starts with a ripple and that slowly turns into a wave, you know? But also, like, John, you know, in that conversation as well, where he talks about the fact is that obviously, like, he's an alien to this planet, and he could, at any point in time, he could have chosen to be any other different form, but he also said, like, as a Martian, he has a benefit to the fact is that, like, right, Kelly is stuck looking the way she is. Him, at any point in time, he could have picked anyone else, but he chose to stay this way, because he even talked about, like, being a black man on this planet. He's like, I felt more like an alien. Like, it makes it even harder sometimes to even feel. And a part of me, like, obviously you can be like, well, for the context of, like, for budgetary reasons, it's like, right, why they don't show him turn into, like, Martian Manhunter anymore? Like, why he just, you know, it's like, you can make the argument, it's like, right, by staying as, like, John, like, as kind of like, as he's in his humanoid form, it's like, right, kind of like being like, no, I'm not going to be like, this is my home, so I'm going to be like the black man that I am here on this planet. You can make the argument there. Like, I'm sure you can fill it in story-wise, but once again, it's just budgetary reasons why they do that, I'm sure. But also, maybe it's also, you can make the argument, it's like, right, accepting like all forms of himself, like who he is on Earth, while also maintaining like being the superhero Martian that he is. So like, I think it's a combination of all of that. You know, you can find a storyteller reason why, but like I said, I'm sure it just comes down to in the context of the show itself, it's just budgetary reasons. Like, because they haven't done it for a while. Him just actually being the Martian, like himself as a Martian Manhunter. They haven't done it in a while, but that's a whole thing. The context of it kind of got me. Just, I felt like the context of it could technically fit within the context of what's happening in this episode in that regard. But because for Alex, it's kind of a thing of like, she's like, right, me and Kelly, we connect on so many levels. We have so much in common. But then, like, John was saying, like, right, but this is something about Kelly that you can't understand. You may never be able to fully understand, but all you can do is, try to be there for her. Like, when she's ready to talk about it, be there so that you can be there. Because she loves you. Obviously, you love her, and obviously she loves you. Just be there for her when she needs you to be. Like, don't try to force the situation. Trying to get, it's like, no, she'll open up when she's ready to kind of let it all out eventually, Which we kind of get a bit of that in the end of the episode. But other elements to this, like I brought up, we had John, which John has made the full round. So, like, I was like, wow, so that's kind of good. Like, sadly, the only thing he didn't pop up in was Black Lightning, but we did get a Black Lightning reference, so I'll get to that. But yeah, I'm assuming, like, everything he's done, like David Ramsey's done, has been like this. John's story has been in like the order he's popped up in everything. So, like, Batwoman, Flash. I feel like Flash might be last, but because I think when he pops up in Superman and Lois, he still is unsure of everything, and Flash was kind of like, right, being pointed in the right direction. So I want to say it's Batwoman, Superman and Lois, Flash, and then Supergirl, I think, is where it is. But Flash and Superman and Lois might get flipped. I think Supergirl is going to be like the last chapter in that, but he's come to town because he's like, right, like, I've been in Metropolis, because Kelly had called Jimmy up because it's like, yeah, like, Jimmy called me, like, we're used to kind of being around, like, kind of like the superhero world, like, we're kind of used to that, so he figured you listen to me more than you would anyone else. And obviously it's like, they also have like the connection of like, she was in the military, he was in the military, and he understands what she's kind of going and carrying around because he's carried around as well. But also it's a conversation of like, right, I've had to be in a situation where Oliver was very good at seeing the big picture. I had to be the person to come there to kind of like show him proof of the smaller picture sometimes. And it's like, it sucks that you have to get proof in the first place, but still, that's kind of how it is. But he kind of points her in the right direction, because she was like, I'm sorry about and it's like, no, like, use that anger that's there, and like use it to kind of fuel, this battle going forward, Don't kind of look at it as its detriment, but look at it as kind of like something positive you can turn, because it was just kind of like, once again, she said it herself, like, she smiled and pretended like everything okay, and it's been bubbling beneath the surface, and this most recent situation with this community just really like sent her over to the point like she can't go back to being like, right, her, like, it's like, no, like, I'm embracing this fully, this is who I'm going to be, this is the fight I'm going to fight, And so, obviously, picking up the mantle of Guardian fully, getting her own design to it, which, sadly, I had gotten some, there's promo out there. So, like, I'd seen, like, the top half of it, but I really like the design, because I love that Brandon was like, hey, I've been just waiting for this time, I believe in you, Kelly Olsen. And it's just like, right, she's like, I'm looking for something flashy. He's like, oh, yeah. So, I really like the design, because obviously, like, Jimmy's Guardian was very, like, plain. There was nothing like, yeah, but hers, like, stands out. It almost has, like, a Vixen feel to it, in actuality. The design of her. It kind of feels almost like Wonder Woman-esque, specifically with, like, that eagle armor. So it kind of feels like that meets Vixen. It's what immediately my mind goes to. But luckily they were able to defeat Rankin. They were able to absorb the fifth dimensional energy from her and restore it to everyone else, so they can get their energy back. At least it won't completely recover them, but at the very least it will give them their energy back. And obviously when Orlando sees Guardian, it's like, right, like all you superheroes, like you offer to help, but then like when we really need you, go, like why should we trust you? And she's like, you shouldn't. The fact of the matter is trust should be earned, which is another show. Like, I talked about it with like Superman and Lois, that whole conversation about trust. It's a very different circumstance, but it's similar in that regard of like a hero gaining its people's trust. It's like, right, that conversation I think is so fascinating, because it is a thing of like, right, all I'm asking for is a chance, because trust is something that once it's broken is not so easily restored. Like obviously taking the Superman and Lois conversation from that, but also apply it in this case, because it's like, right, just give me a chance. And so now she's kind of representing herself to be the pillar of the community, even convincing Orlando, now that Rankin's been dropped out of that situation, she was arrested, that community is going to need someone to represent it. And he's like, yeah, but I got to look after my brother. I'm an ex-con. It's like, right, but that makes you, your perspective, your situation, you've looked after this community like no one else has, and it means like you out of anyone should take up that mantle, that responsibility of like being the council person to speak for them on their behalf, because you represent that community. You can speak for that community from your circumstances. But Diggle did say that line I thought was interesting, which I brought up earlier about him referencing Jefferson Pierce. Was like, he's like a line, something I'd heard from Jefferson Pierce of like, fight, don't be a hero of the people, be a hero for the people, and there's a very big distinction in that. And I think, yes, Black Lightning is done, but once again, that is the thing of like this universe of like, for however long they want to continue things, they can always pull stuff that is from this universe. Even if Black Lightning is gone, it can still live on in other things, because that line means a lot, because it's like, right, we know Black Lightning, it means a lot in this universe because we know they know Jefferson Pierce, we know they know Jefferson Pierce, and the fact is that like Black Lightning as a whole, that's showing everything that it represented, what Jefferson Pierce represented, like resonates so innately with this episode, and just like with what Kelly's going through and what the community's going through, that like hearing that line specifically being like, oh, it's a Jefferson Pierce line, speaks volumes. Because even not Jeff, but Diggle was saying like, what kind of hero do you want to be? Because he's like, right, I have an opportunity for something greater, but it would mean leaving my children behind, would mean leaving Lila behind, and so he didn't want to do that. So it's like, that's what I'm saying. Like after the Flash, he was like, I'm gonna go do this, but I think he's gone and done it, but I think he's still trying to like balance both, like doing the intergalactic stuff as a Lantern while still maintaining on Earth. Because like he's like, oh, like Brady's like, oh, you're leaving. He's like, yeah. And as he's in the elevator, he's like, worlds away. It's like, yeah. So like, I don't know if it's a thing of like he had changed his mind, but I think it is like he's trying to like do both, try and be there. I think that's the type of hero he wants to be, because he doesn't want to leave everything that's here behind. It's like, no, this is still kind of my fight here, my family's here, but also the battle's out there in the sky, I actually didn't talk about it in Ordinary Joe, but the actor I know who's from but he's in Ordinary Joe as like Joe's best bud, Eric. He was also like, the other thing I remember because I looked it up in his IMDb. It's like, right, he was the new Deathstroke in the future in season 8 of Arrow. Along with all of this, we do have the ending where Alex is there for Kelly. It's like, how do I support you? Because for Kelly, it's like she's so tired. She's just tired of it all. Tired because like for her for so long, it's like as a psychologist, she's always been about like keeping her emotions in check. Which I think there's a parallel there with like Alex in that same vein and regard. But it's like, her emotions kind of all over the place. She doesn't want to like, don't try to like get me to open up about everything so we can be communicable. It's just like, right, just kind of be there for me, like just hold me, and support me in those regards, and just others. It's just like, it's kind of like a don't get me to try and like open up just so you can just this ain't the time to just really just like be here with me in this fight, like let's do this together, but also just like just hold me, like as I'm like figuring stuff out on my own as well. I don't want to just like unpackage all of this right now, unless it's like the appropriate and right time to like really like, because I have to figure it out for myself first before we even get to that point. So that's going to be interesting going forward. But also Lena coming back. She cut her witch training very short because it's like, right, my friends need help. So I'm sure she's going to be a big help with the whole Nixley thing. Like I said, her learning this witchcraft stuff just when they're dealing with fifth dimensional beings. Because by helping everyone else out with the community, which was the right thing to do, it has armed Nixley with the means of like continuing her search for the totems, because she was kind of like stuck in purgatory with that right now, because like all that fifth dimensional energy was getting fed off by Rankin at the time, so she wasn't getting the energy she needed from Nixie to like find the totems. But they're back into it now. But Lena's back in town, and just before as she came back, the book that Florence somehow, I guess, magically sent her, because it's like, oh, interesting how it got here before I did. How'd you manage that? So it's, yeah. So we're definitely going to be seeing Lena like balance more on that magic skill and stuff like that. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out as we tick down to the final episodes. Well, keep ticking down the final episodes and see where everything ultimately ends up taking us going forward. But really, that's all I want to talk about today. Next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.